If you've been thinking about implementing the famous tree-fund strategy, stop right now. Okay, I admit that was a bit over the top. But seriously, I think the classic tree-fund strategy is completely overrated and is wasting your time. Or worse, it could even be dangerous. Let me show you why and also which one ETF can instantly replace it. The tree-fund portfolio was inspired by the philosophy of John Bogle, the founder of Vanguard and considered by many the father of index investing. Its goal was simple: divide the portfolio between bonds, USA stocks, and non-USA stocks. No, sorry Americans, I won't call them international because you are international to 96% of the world's population. Anyways, I love you guys. The division between the three categories varies, but most often I have seen it being 60% USA stocks, 20% non-USA stocks, and 20% bonds. I personally think this is not a great way to run a portfolio, and here I will explain to you why. And for all of you bogleheads that will hate me for it, you can press the thumbs down button if you have no soul and want bad luck to follow you for the rest of your life. I will divide my argument in two parts. First, I will discuss the stock part and then the bond part. Finally, I will show you how, if you still want a version of the strategy, one ETF can both simplify it and make it less dangerous. Starting with the stock portion of the portfolio. Originally, the idea of the split between 60% US and 20% non-US stocks was to take advantage of the USA as the main driver of the world's stock market returns and introduce non-US companies for diversification. Let me show you two reasons why this logic is flawed. First, at best, you are not really achieving anything spectacular that way if you compare a combination of US and non-US stocks to a simple global stock portfolio. Let's compare two portfolios. One is made up of 25% non-US stocks and 75% US stocks in order to keep the ratio the same as in the original 20 to 60%. The other portfolio is 100% into one ETF, VT, the total world stock market. Here are the results for the past 12 years, since the data is constrained by the ETF that was created the soonest. And I can hear the haters screaming, "See, the portfolio outperforms the others. You don't know what you're talking about." Whoa, let me explain. Yes, the combined portfolio of the ETFs, the US and non-US, in a combination of 75% to 25%, outperforms the total world ETF. But it only does it by less than 2% per year, first, and second, it does it in the period of the huge boom of the USA big tech companies during the 2010s as a starting period. Obviously, since the USA crushed everything in that time, the more you tilt the portfolio towards USA, the better it will perform. And if you tilt it towards big tech, it will perform even better. If I put the Nasdaq 100 there, it obviously would crush the total world stock portfolio. However, here comes the second issue with the stock portion of the tree-fund portfolio. The ratio is fixed. That means that you hold 60% USA and 20% non-USA forever. The less than 2% outperformance isn't worth it in the case, and here is why. When you have those fixed percentages, if the global situation changes, you can be seriously left behind. This isn't the case with owning a one world stock ETF, where the positions of each country will slowly increase or decrease in time depending on the weight of each stock market. If you own the global fund, you will not be left behind if suddenly a few big tech companies come out of the UK and the UK's share of the global market increases from 3.5% to 10% and the US one goes down from 62 to 54%. And if you think that can't happen, think again. Yes, I also believe the USA companies will keep dominating and they are the best and most innovative, but that doesn't rule out some other country rising up. A good example here is Japan's stock market, which in the late 80s was bigger than that of the USA. At the time, some people had thought that Japan's economy will overtake that of the USA, that this trend will continue, etc. It seems funny now, but it's really hard to think of the changes in the future when you are stuck in the present, and you and me are no different. As of May 31st, 1988, 8 Japanese corporations were in the top 10 largest companies in the world. The only American stock to make it to the list was ExxonMobil in 6th place. Okay, so now imagine this. The Japanese stock market was about 40% of the world stock market. Now imagine people decided to take a fixed 50% position on Japan in a Japan-only ETF. Well, here was the situation just 10 years later. By 1999, the Japan's percentage of the world stock market went down 4 times as the USA reached a gain over 50%. What does the future hold? No one knows. I definitely think that USA's position is a lot better compared to Japan's, since it has the best and largest army by a long shot. It's a lot larger and blessed with better geography and natural resources like arable land and domestic oil reserves. However, as I said, if I will follow a set it and forget it strategy as the 3-fund portfolio is, I prefer it to be more automated with the stock part in a single ETF that adjusts with time instead of having the US and non-US portions fixed. So basically, that makes the 3-fund portfolio into a 2-fund portfolio, right? Well, not exactly. Let's discuss the bond part. Since this is a portfolio that a person will be holding long-term, probably for decades, especially if you are a decade or more from retiring, holding bonds is a complete waste in my opinion, especially bond ETFs. The reason is that bonds always underperform stocks in the long term. Also, under our current monetary system where governments are allowed to print money, the value of the fixed principal and fixed coupon payments of those bonds is literally getting destroyed by design. Here is a comparison between the total world stock market ETF I talked about already and the total bond market one. The stock ETF destroys the bond ETF for the past 15 years with over 8% more compounded annual growth rate. Even if we now get the whole 3-fund portfolio and compare it to the 1-fund portfolio, it is still not worth it in my opinion. In the 3-fund portfolio, which you can see here as portfolio 1, you get less than 1% overperformance over the 1-fund total world stock market ETF portfolio, which is portfolio 2 in the image. And for that 0.5% outperformance, you have piled several risks on top of each other. First, the country rotation risk in the stock part, which we already talked about, and second, an even more aggressive government money printing as a risk to the bond part. Now, for some retirees, there might be some sense to keep the bond part for stability, but I would advise against holding a bond fund because bond funds can fall in value just like stocks. As we saw in 2022, when there is inflation and central banks hike rates, bond funds can crash with double-digit percentages. If you are keen on holding bonds, I think something like a bond ladder of individual bonds would make more sense because you will know exactly what amount of money you will get back at a certain date when the bond matures, instead of having them in an ETF that is as crashy, if there is such a word, as stocks. However, I personally would not be comfortable with that approach and I would prefer to own dividend-paying companies and ETFs in my retirement so that I can get the passive income to support part or all of my lifestyle even if the stock market goes down. If you choose quality companies with good businesses or filter out ETFs that hold such stocks, your payments may even increase in a stock market downturn, just like it happened with my portfolio in 2022. In that year, while my portfolio was down, I actually had more dividend income at the end of it than in the beginning. If you want to find out more about that strategy, you can sign up for my free investing masterclass in the link in the description. However, if you want to avoid that and are adamant about sticking to one fund, you can simply pick the Vanguard Total World ETF, but a distributing version, and that way you will get some yield on top of your portfolio to rely on in market downturns. At least that would be my approach if I decided to substitute the 3-fund portfolio with the 1-fund portfolio. So let me know in the comments, what do you think about this strategy and do you like it better than the 3-fund one? Also, make sure you continue your investing education with that video that should have appeared on your screen already. And never forget that anything I say here is not a financial advice and you should make your own decisions based on your own circumstances. See you in the next one.